There are moments in history when the number of actors shrinks, not because the world becomes simpler, but because the stakes become larger. In the early internet, thousands of companies tried to define the digital world. Search engines, social networks, marketplaces. Then something happened. Google remained. Amazon remained. Meta remained. The rest faded into the background. Not because they were stupid, not because they didn't try, but because systems with strong network effects tend to consolidate. And now we are watching the same thing happen again with artificial intelligence, with capital, and perhaps most importantly, with governance. The pattern. Every technological revolution begins with explosion. Ideas multiply, startups appear everywhere. Everyone thinks they might be the one, but eventually gravity sets in. Standards emerge, infrastructure solidifies, and the field narrows. What begins with thousands often ends with a handful. Railroads, oil companies, telecommunications, the internet, and now AI. Why consolidation happens? The reason is simple but uncomfortable. Scale wins. Large models require enormous compute, enormous data sets, enormous capital. And when systems begin interacting with each other, governing each other, the advantages of scale compound even further. The result is something like a gravitational well. Smaller actors orbit the larger ones. Sometimes they collaborate. Sometimes they get absorbed. Sometimes they disappear. The governance question. But here's the deeper question. When intelligence becomes infrastructure, who governs it? In the industrial age, governments eventually stepped in. Antitrust laws, regulation, standards. But the pace of AI development is faster than any previous technological shift. And traditional governance structures move slowly. This creates a strange moment in history. A moment where governance itself becomes a design problem, not just a political one. The O'Mega idea. One possible response to this challenge is something like O'Mega. Not as a single company, not even as a single system, but as a framework for governing AI systems themselves, where rules are embedded into the runtime layer, where enforcement is automated, where the system can prune bad actors the same way a network prunes corrupted nodes. In other words, Instead of hoping intelligence behaves well, you build the incentives so that misbehavior becomes structurally difficult. The bigger pattern. If you zoom out far enough, the pattern looks familiar. Human history has always oscillated between fragmentation and consolidation. City-states become empires. Empires collapse into smaller states. And the cycle begins again. Technology accelerates this process, and artificial intelligence might accelerate it more than anything before. Closing reflection. So the real question may not be, will the AI world consolidate? History suggests that it will. The real question is, what kind of structures will survive that consolidation? Structures that centralize power, or structures that distribute it? Structures built on opaque control, or structures built on transparent rules? The choices we make in the next decade may determine the answer. This has been Baby Blue Viper, a podcast about technology, power, and the strange new world forming around us. If you enjoy the show, consider sharing it with someone who thinks deeply about the future. And until next time, stay curious.